If you grew up gaming in the late 80s or early 90s, you may likely be able to recall an era in which beat-em-ups were king. Whether you happen to be playing these things in arcades or at home, many stellar efforts were on offer. From the fantastic licensed titles from Konami to Capcom's Final Fight, and Sega's excellent Streets of Rage and Golden Axe games, this genre had a lot to offer. After going out of fashion and essentially disappearing for many decades, the legendary beat-em-up format is back, and as strong as ever. In this renaissance period, we have got to experience many modern classics, such as Streets of Rage 4, Shredder's Revenge, and the River City Girls games. But these brilliant brawlers are simply the tip of the iceberg of good quality. Today we are going to take an up-close look at one of the very best of this new era, as we celebrate one of the most criminally underrated titles that can be found on modern hardware. So with all of that said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. Time to look at a game that deserves way more respect. Yeah! Do you remember the classic 1990s cartoon Fight and Rage? The adventures of F.Norris and Ricardo fighting against the powerful villains that have conquered humanity after disastrous EMP has destroyed human society. Well, that wasn't a real show, and if you said yes, you're a dirty, dirty liar. Fight and Rage is a modern multiplayer beat-em-up created by one man, Sebastian Garcia, as a homage to both the legendary 90s belt action brawlers such as Streets of Rage and Final Fight, and the 90s extreme cartoons that frequently focused on superpowered heroes fighting against incredible odds. Long-time viewers of the channel will know I have a fascination and outright addiction to beat-em-ups, a genre known as belt action games in Japan, as you're constantly walking down a belt of land that enemies constantly come down. When video games shifted from 2D to 3D, this is one of the genres that just didn't successfully make the jump. While Fighting Force was once planned to be Streets of Rage 4, the title was met with middling reviews and was largely the last gasp for adventures of warriors walking down alleys and beating up strangers. 3D just happened to be built for more adventurous explorations of the world, and with the expansion of storage mediums, games that would feature players beating up one another have gone for a more narrative approach. While you can walk around in Vice City and beat people up, it's hard to call that anything but an adventure action title. But Sebastian Garcia clearly has a love for the genre, and this one-man company under the name of Seba Games Dev would release his love letter to the 90s with Fight and Rage, a completely original property. The original version of the title would release in September 2017, with releases on the PC, Windows, Switch, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Thanks to the backwards compatibility, or well, the fact that these consoles and computers are still around, means that while released late in the last generation of gaming, the title is still readily available on all modern consoles. Looking at the title, you'll instantly see a few inspirations. While gameplay may be based on classic Konami Ninja Turtles games, visually the game appears to be a spiritual retread of series such as the Cowboys of Moon Mesa, Biker Mice from Mars, and any other 90s post-apocalyptic but kids-safe adventures with mutant animal men. Who remembers Street Sharks? And by the way, Cowboys of Moon Mesa, it's been a while since I covered that underrated arcade game. Set in a far future, Earth was devastated by mutants who took control after a worldwide catastrophic event known as the Big Pulse. A global-scale electromagnetic pulse that put an end to all electronic technology on the planet. Humans are now enslaved by mutants led by the Boss, in a world ruled by the law of the jungle. However, not everything is lost. 2 humans and a mutant rebel are willing to fight in order to stop this madness. Will they be strong enough? Well, that's up to you. Sounds a bit like Planet of the Apes, where a ragtag human or team fight against their vastly physical superior mutant animal overlords. The story of the Fight and Rage universe will change as you progress through the branching paths and decisions over the course of a playthrough. Solid experienced players can knock out a route in an hour, if you can get past that final boss, which I've always struggled with. So you'll see a few different permutations of the story if you sit down for a day and explore. Or honestly, you can also choose not to explore. A few times in my gameplay I've found that indecision in itself is a decision. Choosing not to aid a team of rebels in their fight against your subjugators will lead to them being slaughtered, and your player character having to grapple with their cowardice, leading to the death of others. The main trio of heroes you'll take up in this adventure will appropriately fill all the stereotypes of a beat 'em up. The most unique design of the trio is Ricardo, a Minotaur human rights activist based loosely off of Mayor Mike Haggar. Clearly the bruiser of the bunch, he's a dominating force with a long reach, focusing on powerful attacks and taking a significant amount of hits. F.Norris, a likely play on Chuck Norris, an amusing name I'm not going to rhyme because of the absurdly tyrannical nature of the YouTube gods. This character is the ninja of a title. Norris is the weakest of the three, but appropriately balances reach, power and speed with his ninjutsu style. Lastly, but probably first for all the men of culture that follow this channel, is Gal, the kickboxing wow gal, who has some great jiggle physics applied to her design. She has escaped from the human traders. Her variant of kickboxing means she's an up-close brawler with limited reach, but has the highest speed and agility. Generally, in beat-em-ups for some reason, female characters are usually always faster than their male counterparts. Even though I don't see any reason why the likes of Blaze Fielding, for example, would be faster than the likes of Adam and Axel. They look like men in peak condition, so I would have thought that biology would be on their side. They should have just made Blaze the weakest and the hard mode of the game. It would have been more realistic that way. But hey, don't look at me, I don't make the rules. Not every woman in gaming can be a brick shithouse like Marissa, the muscle mummy all of you at home regularly fantasize about. Ooh. With 3 characters available at the start of the game, this means that players can truly engage in 3-person co-op without repeating any designs, and players can even toggle friendly fire. So if you want a bit more of a challenge, you can simply throw enemies at your friends, punishing them whenever they disobey you. In terms of control, simplicity is key in this game. There are just 3 buttons to remember, one for attacking, another for jumping, and a third for executing special techniques. But once you begin exploring the game's combat, you will quickly discover that it offers way more depth than one would expect. In addition to the basic controls, we also have access to various grappling techniques. We can launch our enemies in different directions while executing combos. The effectiveness of our attacks even changes when we perform them while running. Defensively, it is also possible to employ a stop system to defend oneself. This requires precise timing, pressing either forward or backward at the exact moment you anticipate an incoming attack, allowing it to be countered effectively. Furthermore, the game features specific commands using the directional pad and buttons to execute unique attacks. All the elements we have mentioned so far can be combined to create an array of diverse and intricate combinations to pull off devastating maneuvers. Even walls can be utilised to bounce opponents from, thus extending the potential injuries we can inflict upon them. Nice. Special attacks are crucial in battle, granting us frames of invulnerability and inflicting significant damage. Safeguards are in place though, preventing us from simply spamming such functions. This is partially done via a rechargeable indicator, to make us more selective regarding when we choose to unleash hell. But if this meter happens to not be filled, you can perform these explosive attacks in exchange for a portion of one's life bar instead. The defensive mechanic that we mentioned earlier is also important, as parrying helps us replenish that incredibly useful special attack bar. Throughout a playthrough, the action unfolds at a remarkable pace and the combat encounters are fluid, thus enabling us to continuously chain together powerful strikes. Consequently, boredom is often the last thing on one's mind when playing this game. Everything about Fight and Rage has a fantastic rhythm to it, making combat feel incredibly satisfying throughout. Everything one could want from a beat 'em up really. One thing I would like to add though, at points this game feels freaking hard, particularly when facing off against the final boss. To some degree it has that get good or go home mentality instilled within it, an old school attitude that is severely lacking with most modern video games. Not only is this challenge refreshing and welcomed, but you get that sweet dopamine release from managing to do something difficult, which you're never ever gonna get in a basic bitch game like, say, The Last of Us 2 for example. This is a real game, not modern interactive movie nonsense. If you have failed enough times on your quest and are playing multiplayer and blame your cohorts for your shortcomings, you can take the battle to versus mode. A versus mode in any fighting game would be a bit boring if you could only play as 3 street ruffians, as the original Fatal Fury would quickly find out. But thanks to the variety of villains you defeat in your quest, you can recruit over 20 of your foes for the versus mode. Throughout the game, players will earn a number of coins that can be redeemed in the menu. Thankfully, accurately remembering how games were handled back in the day, there's no paid DLC to unlock new characters, you just have to grind the in-game currency. Beyond new characters for the versus mode, you can unlock new costumes for the characters, a variety of difficulty settings and speeds. This inclusion within the game helps give it a great deal of replayability, providing plenty of reason to come back to this well-designed game. But don't just take my word regarding this game's greatness, let's hear what others had to say too. The publication known as Vandal would love the game, stating, "We're not going to beat around the bush. Fight and Rage is one of the best classic beat-em-ups ever made. A true tribute for fans of the genre who should not let it escape for the world. It has a multitude of routes, endings, modes, secrets, extras, and a great audio-visual section and bomb-proof gameplay. Ingredients that combine to leave us with a product that is as challenging as it is satisfying, and fun that it is impossible to reject as long as you like it. What it proposes, whether it's to play alone or in company, don't hesitate to give it a try. You will not regret it." While criticising its short gameplay length, darkzero.co.uk would shower this one with praise too. They would write, "In the end, Fight and Rage can't escape its short runtime, which is prominent with every beat-em-up game. They were originally created to serve as short arcade experiences after all. But the branching story paths, combo-heavy characters, and numerous unlockable extras more than make up a full package filled with incentives to keep playing. As a modern throwback to arcade classics, Fight and Rage is one of the very best in the business right now." Nintendo added to the praise, commenting, "Fight and Rage has a name that suggests an old school beat 'em up, and that's exactly what it is. A tribute to some of the classic names of this dimension of gaming that was so popular in decades past. But that's not the only thing that Fight and Rage gets right. Its gameplay mechanics, amount of content, different endings, and top-notch audio-visual environment all contribute to make this one classic-style beat-em-up that is worthy to enter the Nintendo Switch of any fan of the style. Beyond the game's initial release on consoles, digital marketplaces, this would not be the end of Fight and Rage Mania. You will be happy to know that the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch releases would gain physical releases thanks to Limited Run, with the high-end version of the game being bundled with a soundtrack. This soundtrack was masterfully created by Gonzalo Varela and is also available digitally on the Steam marketplace with the game. Coming later this year, there will also be another new physical release by Spanish-published Selecta Play, including a diorama and a gold edition of the album in a remastered 2-disc collection. Following the previous physical releases, the developers would go back to the title and make a fair amount of upgrades for the next generation of consoles. For the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, Blitworks would upgrade the title with 120 frames per second gameplay. So, if you're one of the people who can count that crazy amount of frames per second, your eyes would be amazed at how smooth the sprite-based gameplay would be. Compared to heavy hitters like Streets of Rage 4 and Shredder's Revenge, Fight and Rage has flown a bit under the radar versus the others. But for many who have experienced this game, this is a cherished title in its own right. Overall, Fight and Rage is an enjoyable homage to beat-em-ups of old. It successfully captures the spirit of classic arcade games, offering a nostalgic experience with its retro visuals and engaging gameplay. If you're a fan of old school brawlers and appreciate challenging gameplay, Fight and Rage is definitely worth checking out. If you enjoyed this episode, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, then watch my recent upload on the importance of the Double Dragon franchise, the cooperative beat 'em up that started them all. Finally, I would like to give a quick shout out to my friend Chad Bonin, who co-wrote this episode with me. A while back he uploaded a video about this game on his own YouTube channel, so I urge you to check that one out too. Anyway, cheerio.